So today we will discuss on the topic of karma and compassion, broadly speaking. Does the philosophy of karma make us hard-hearted? And I'll just give a brief introduction to this and then we can have some question answers. Thank you for joining today, everyone. And most of you may know that I have a physical handicap. I have polio in one of my legs. So I need some crutches or some braces for walking. So when I was a child, I always used to wonder, why was this problem there with me? And I had grown up. So there's a difference between growing up in a religious family and growing up with philosophical understanding. So we, in a general religious upbringing, we understand that God's will is supreme and whatever happens is by His will. But that can be give some devotional pacification, that maybe God will bring some good out of the bad, but still that doesn't really explain why something happens. So it is only when I started studying the Bhagavad Gita and then I understood the principle of karma. And I had later on I read this idea that the philosophy of karma can actually make one hard-hearted. In fact, there was an article in BTG a few years ago about how karma kicks a football coach. The idea was that there's this football coach for a major league in UK, and he said that people who are poor or people who are handicapped in some way, it's because of their karma. And there was like a hailstorm of censure upon him, where they said that how can you be so insensitive? How can you be so? People are already suffering, and on top of them, you are demonizing them. And eventually, he had to resign, or he was fired.
Hello, good evening. The row over Glenn Hoddle's reported views on the disabled and reincarnation show no sign of abating. He says he's been misunderstood and misinterpreted. The England football coach has been trying to put the record straight, saying that the last thing he wanted was to upset people with disabilities.
In the wake of the article, Glenn Hoddle was sent to Coventry, the Coventry-Liverpool match in the Premiership to be precise. The England coach is no stranger to controversy, but even he seems shocked at the way his comments have been interpreted. He's quoted as saying, "You and I have been given 2 hands and 2 legs and half-decent brains. Some people have not been born like that for a reason. The karma is working from another lifetime. What you sow, you have to reap." And though the England coach says he didn't mean disability is linked to previous sins, it's still no clearer what he did mean.
All I've said, I gave an example of the man asked me about reincarnation, which I've been on television and radio before, and said that's a personal belief of mine. I tried to give him an example of why people, are born into sometimes in life in poverty, in material riches. And there's an imbalance there's an injustice, of which I've also said people were born disabled coming into life, and other people, I've personally got 3 lovely children that have not been disabled, God bless, at this moment in time.
There are people on the fringes of society, particularly in Germany, for example, who actually have attacked disabled people on the basis that there is something wrong, evil about them, and therefore that justifies damage to them. And I think anything that encourages that sort of approach is very difficult to deal with and very disturbing.
The Minister for Sport is similarly disturbed.
So the idea is that when somebody is going through some distress, is the philosophy of karma meant to put them on a further guilt, burden them with a further sense of guilt? That is the idea that some people have, but at least in my experience, it wasn't like that. It was generally the way the philosophy of karma has been understood in the tradition. It is primarily forward-looking, not backward-looking. It is primarily more for preparing us to make wiser choices in the future, not so much to get into a post-mortem about what choices who has done in the past. And philosophy, or any particular philosophical point in specific, if it is not understood in the context in which it is applied traditionally, then we can apply it in a different context, and that can be counterproductive. So this is the whole idea of karma, is to help us choose better. So So I'll just make one point and then we can move on to question answers. The word karma itself has multiple meanings. You can have 4 or 5 meanings of the word karma. So before we launch into discussion question answer, let's look at these meanings so that we know what we are talking about. So the word karma can refer at one level to the law of karma. Nobody can escape their karma. Or the law of karma is infallible. It's inescapable. Human law can be escaped, but the law of karma can't be escaped. Here, karma refers to the link between cause and effect, between action and consequence. That's one meaning of the word karma. The other meaning of the word karma is often, say, if I say I am suffering my own karma, there what we mean is we are talking about the reactions of our karma. So reactions of our actions rather. So we have done some actions, and why is somebody going through this? It's because of their own karma. That means the past actions that they have done, they're getting the reactions. So karma can be used to refer to reactions. Karma can be used to refer even to actions. Choose your karma well right now. Beyond that, karma can also refer to duty. Karmanne vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that you have a right to doing your duty, but don't be attached to the results. So karma in that sense refers to the principle of action, or specifically of responsible action or duty. And karma can also refer to one particular kind of action, where we say that there is karma, vikarma and akarma. Karma is pious action, vikarma is impious action, and akarma is action that is not going to produce any reaction. So basically, when we look at, so with this meaning of the word karma, broadly speaking, then the Bhagavad Gita talks about karma. Its stress is on understanding how we can choose wisely. The Gita doesn't go so much into the analysis of, say, now this war is happening. Why is this war happening? Is it a reaction to particular karma? If somebody is going to suffer something, is it going to be because of this karma or that karma? It doesn't go into specifics. It focuses on principles. And in the Bhagavad Gita, again, as I said earlier, it's a forward-looking book. It doesn't go so much back into saying, who he did this and she did this and all that. It's just that how can you act responsibly? How can you act in a way by which you can create a brighter future for yourself? So that's the principle of karma. So any questions or comments? Or we can just start our QA session now.
So understanding that all of our life circumstances are basically governed by our karma, how can we stay compassionate toward others? As you mentioned, when you read about karma and you start to take it on, you become hard-hearted. So how can we do to be more compassionate rather than, like you said, the example that you gave with the coach?
Okay, it's a very important question. There is a difference between being hard-hearted and being clear-headed or level-headed. So several of my friends are doctors, and they tell me that quite often for a doctor to perform his or her duty, emotion can come in the way. A doctor's work is actually work filled with kindness, compassion. But if there is too much emotion comes in the way of judgment. So to take a simple example here, say somebody is alcoholic and they have suffered repeatedly because of the alcoholism, and then they have been told by the doctor, don't drink again, otherwise it could be fatal for you. And yet that person drinks again, and they are rushed into the emergency room, and then the doctor is there. Now the doctor will understandably be annoyed, even angry. But at that time, the doctor is not meant to, you fool, I told you don't drink. Why did you drink? You suffer and you die now. That can never be the mood of a doctor. The doctor has to first treat. So when a patient is there, the first thing that a doctor has to consider is, what is my duty over here? That's why, along with the philosophy of karma, there is also always the concept of dharma. Dharma is our duty. So it is also karma in one of the senses of the word. But so whenever we are interacting with others, our focus has to be not on what is their karma, but on what is our dharma. So a doctor has to think, what is my duty when a patient is sick? Yes, the first is treat the patient, get them out of that emergency, get them out of the pain. And then of course, the doctor may also have to give a cautionary note or cautionary warning that you cannot keep doing this again and again. But that shouldn't be the sole mode of interaction between the doctor and the patient, simply warning or chastising. So when somebody is in a phase of distress, our primary focus should be, what is my dharma in this situation? What am I meant to do in this situation? And that if we focus on, then naturally, if we see somebody who is in distress, we have to see maybe it's my duty to help if somebody is in distress. Charity or compassion are considered important virtues, not just virtues, but also duties in the broad dharmic traditions. And when we are interacting with people at a one-to-one level, it is not for us to judge people based on their past karma in terms of past lives karma. If we start judging people based on their past lives karma, we will become completely heartless. If they say a person is robbed and that person goes to the police or to the king and the king says, oh, you're robbed because of your past karma, then social order will break down. Or if say a baby is crying and a mother thinks, oh, this baby is crying because of her past karma, then that will dry up all maternal love. So we don't do that. So the mother and the king have to see what is their dharma. And so we understand at a philosophical level that everybody is going through the consequences of their actions. But the primary focus is not to be into that hyper analytical mode. What consequences this person going through? Our focus should be on what the responsible attitude, what am I meant to do in this situation? So what is my duty in this situation? And sometimes it may be that there is very little that we can do in that situation. And then we can just offer our good wishes and prayers and move on. Or sometimes we do what is required and whatever is possible for us. So that's why the principle of karma will make us level-headed. That means we don't get sentimentally carried away and just try to fix anything and everything, because there are so many things wrong in the world. It's not our duty or responsibility to try to fix everything. But that doesn't mean we become completely apathetic. So the philosophy of karma can make us level-headed so that we can act in a way that is compassionate but also effective. Otherwise, we just try to fix every problem and we end up fixing nothing. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, you mentioned about duty, right? So a sort of a related question. So scriptures talk about something called prayaschitta.